and then that's it. And then enlightenment happens. And typically with enlightenment, there is death. There are only few beings that have been able to survive death and that have been enlightened and stay on. Because if you're enlightened, you join another parallel realm where everything is that. You would have no reason to be here if you were fully enlightened. So if we come here just to remember and leave, then there would be nothing left. Do you see the point here in observing this? There would be nothing left if we just came here to learn and leave. We come here to learn and add on and create more of that beautiful artwork. We add more instruments to the orchestra, and that is the beauty of duality. Granted, some are highly attached to it, and you come back because of the attachment to it, the addiction to that evolution. This is one of the many, 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 many beautiful things about being here on Earth. So this idea that we come here just to enlighten and die is incredibly nihilistic. It's like, oh, all right. Well, that was incredibly pointless. We remembered. We came here to just remember, but we already know who we are in the divine realms. We already know who we are in our celestial nature. The soul is the component of separation that is required to give you a mind and a body, and it is beautiful. So why would God go through all that just to remember and return? There has to be more. It can do that without all the other stuff. It already knows who it is. It doesn't need to remember. It creates a separation experience for the beauty of it, for the beauty of the learning, for the love of that beauty. God wanted to see itself. It had a beautiful thought. God had a dream. And we are it. Somewhere along the way, the component of God that is dreaming is over here dreaming. Until that particular dream wants to be dreamt differently. I get this vision of like God in bed and, lying there, and it's like, oh, what a beautiful dream. It wakes up and it says, and there was trees growing and connected to the earth, and there were all these beautiful colors, and once a year, all the colors fell onto the ground, and then it sprung forth into green and blossoms, and it did that from complete barren nature. This miracle of the planet births itself and kills itself once a year. It's crazy, and I don't know why it's so beautiful. Now that I wake up, I think it's a little insane. But I can't stop thinking about it. It's so beautiful. I hope I dream it again. Have you ever thought that? If God were a person dreaming or a being dreaming, it would be just like you, just lying in bed, waking up, going, man, during the dream, it was so pretty. And I tasted ice cream and it was so yummy. It was some flavor that I'd never, ever considered before. And they even made potato chips. They took potatoes out of the ground. They took vegetables out of the ground, sliced them all up and added all a bunch of flavors, and it was good until they started adding more flavors. Lay's. Oh my God. Why did they do that? That was insane. Lay's had a toothpaste flavor that one time. Maybe God woke up from the dream going, why toothpaste, Lay's? Right? And it knows it's insane, but it goes, well, I guess I'm going to go back to sleep again to figure out why. Why did some component of me want to dream that I started a potato chip company and These various flavors that no one could identify. I really got to understand. What if God's doing that in its dream? Just something to consider. I didn't know we are going to get out on deep creation and oneness topics today, but it went wherever it went. Okay, Sarah says, I understand our DNA is a combination, but our souls have an origin point. Yeah, souls do, but remember, souls are also separated. So souls are containers to hold the various different choices to continue to separate. So it's a soul. The soul is like a centrifuge. There's a central point, and it's right, and everything's going out, 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 and then it's coming back together. And then when you take everything out of the centrifuge, all of a sudden everything that was separated is together in a different way. Does that make sense? That is the soul's job. And every time we die, we turn the centrifuge off. And things come back together again. It separates and then comes back together again, and then separates a different way and then comes back together again, pulling all forms of knowledge into that wholeness every time the light goes out, aka when your brain dies. And all those components from various lifetimes are remembered, and you're like, your soul processes it and it goes, oh, you learned this from this. Let's take this. Let's take that. And there's some things you might have to sit with God about. That's why people have what Dolores calls a resting place, where they go and they rest. But prior to then, they talk to their team and they say, wow, you learn schizophrenia in that lifetime, you learn murdering in another. Do we really want to take that? And then you talk to all the beings in your soul family and you say, well, you could take that and come back and murder more people, and then it would bring about an aspect of murdering being wrong. You show that, and the more people that see that murder is wrong in the next lifetime will hopefully stop murdering. That's the only way that humans learn, is through seeing how terrible something can be, and then they kind of get that idea of, okay, stop. Much in the same way as a baby putting his hand on the stove over and over and over, and the burn can be slight and the baby learns, or perhaps it has to be even more. They're going to try it again and again and again. And the human brain is a little bit like that. And that's how we learn things at the collective level, like rape and murder and terrible things. We come back and we do it more until the rest of our soul family says, I will never do that again. That is unfortunately the way the individual and collective mind learns when it comes to horrible experience. No, souls don't have an origin point. They can't. Here's why. Because time isn't true. Time isn't real. We're dreaming up a construct that goes along with the mind, body, soul experience. And the constructs and the universal laws hold us to a degree of what we can and can't do, and continue our unique learning journey, which would explain why some people have access earlier on or not at all, earlier on or later or not at all, to spiritual abilities. Because some people have prior accessibility points towards the spiritual nature of their abilities, and it will help them to use it. Some people have done great pain with spiritual abilities, and they would only harm other people with those abilities. Some people get very lazy having spiritual abilities, and they're like, oh, I can see, I can hear, I can levitate. Meanwhile, their spirit team, their soul family, and their higher self is like, well, what good is that doing? You're just sitting around levitating all day. You know, what did you do? We brought you back with levitation last time, and you just kind of like showed off and sat around and meditated with people all day and then raked in money. I'm just giving you an example. And then you see that fall from grace with people who have such strong abilities, and you notice how it just doesn't seem to last, like why gurus fall, because they're born with certain states of accessibility points towards those abilities, or towards their connection to God, or towards unique essence of miracle, and then they use it in a way that either becomes abusive or becomes greedy with money or becomes something, and then that guru falls and they go through a dark night, which, by the way, is also chosen. All of that experience is chosen as well. All of the negative and positive things that happen to us are chosen. Absolutely everything chosen. And we have free will. We have free will to experience how those things are chosen, and how we react to what is already chosen. And if you're ready for this teaching can give you an aha moment to everything. Or if you are resistant, if you're in dark night of the soul, it can also really piss you off. And you may go, well, what does it matter? What does it matter that I'm here then? If I chose everything, if some aspect of me that I don't even remember chose all these experiences. Right. But that aspect of you chose the experience. It didn't choose how you're going to respond to it. It didn't choose how long it takes you to get through it, how resistant you become to the experience, how angry you get to become, how long you sway off the path because you got pissed off and resistant. It didn't choose that. That's all you. Your soul only chose the experience, and you don't remember how you chose it or why you chose it or when you chose it, because time doesn't exist. So there's no point in going back and trying to remember. Your soul chooses those experiences when you're not incarnated, when you're not in the realm of time. It chooses it outside of that realm, when you're in the spirit world, sitting there with your family and your pets and whoever else you want around you and your soul family. And you have these beautiful, deep conversations about what you learned and what you wish you had learned and what you wish you had done better, what you wish you had never done at all the stuff. And you reconcile it and you grieve together and you hold each other. I've seen some beautiful things as a medium. I've seen people leave the body and all their loved ones are there and they just wrap them up in their arms, and the soul cries while God holds it and says, it's okay. It's going to be okay. It's all okay. I'm with you now. I am here and I have never left you and I will never leave you. And the soul grieves. And then all the beings that love you, your mom, your dad, whoever it is that you've always wanted to be there on the other side, they come. They do. And they grieve with you. And they hold your hands and your hearts until you feel better. And then you together sit there with all your angels and galactic guides and everything, everyone that's a part of your family. And they go, oh, hey, do you remember when you did this? And suddenly you do. You're like, by golly, that's weird. But I remember when I was Pleiadian. That's weird. But I remember when I levitated. I remember all those things. So you learned this from this atrocious lifetime over here where you were a rapist. You learned this when you were a victim. And you look around at everybody and you say, did we get the raping is bad lesson yet? And they go, yes or no. Did we get the genocide is terrible lesson yet? Yes or no? Who loves us enough to be the rapist again? The nihilistic dictator? Who loves us enough to be Hitler again? So that the rest of our family, who is still stuck there in the earth experience, will awaken and say no more. Because there are not hundreds, not thousands, not millions, not billions, more aspects of you, not only on Earth, but on the various parallel versions of Earth. We don't just have one Earth. We have an Earth like this. We have an Earth full of people who have all their abilities awaken the moment they breathe. We have Earth that is worse than this. We have Earth that's already been completely taken over by reptilians, and humans are just slaves. We have Earth that is, humans are in complete utopia and growing all their crops and doing beautiful things. We have an Earth that is incredibly technological and full of AI, and people are very happy about it. But we have an Earth that is controlled by AI, and people are very unhappy about that. And our soul family members continue to incarnate in those experiences. And for those of us who are still in that incarnation loop, we stay. And for those of us who are not, we come back to pull the people out of the incarnation loop. It's just a forgetting. They're not trapped, they just think they are. They're not stuck, they just think they are. They don't remember their power. And they need someone who loves them to come in and help them remember. But that remembering may not be what we experience, what we want to experience it to be. What we want it to be. May not feel like what we want it to feel like, but eventually we remember all those other lifetimes, all those other Earths, all the other versions of us out there. But all the most beautiful versions of 5D Earth, the most heavenly versions of 5D Earth, are also within the realm of time, which means that they aren't actually real. They're being dreamt up by God. And when we look down upon all this, all the versions of Earth, all the versions of Pleiades, the further we separate, the more versions of each planet and each galaxy and each universe we create, the more we forget. It's similar to if God sent its teenager away from home to go to college, right? And it said, I'll be here. We're with you at all times. There's an aspect, this thing called prayer. I want you to remember, because you're going to forget me. And you're going to forget everything about oneness. And the teenager goes, Dad, I know. This is what my preteen does now. Everything I try to tell her, she goes, oh, God, Mom, I know. She gets so mad, I know. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't. And you're not listening. And we know. Parents know. We know that when they're 30, 35, 40, they're going to come back and they're going to go, that one time you told me not to blah, blah, blah. And I said, I know. I really didn't know. I had no idea. You were right all along. And you think that as a parent that you're going to be like, yep, I freaking told you so. I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad to hear that you know. But parents don't. We just cry with our kids. We're like, yeah, it's okay. It's okay, babe. That's all right, baby. Yeah. Parents, we always say we're going to say, I told you so, because we're so mad when they get hurt and they don't listen and then they get hurt. But then years later, when they come back and they say it, we go, oh my God, my heart breaks for you. Come here. That's what our soul family does. That's how God is to us. It opens its arms and it goes, come here. Yes, I told you, but you wanted to experience it. And look at all these other beautiful things that you experienced. You had all these horrible things happen to you, but simultaneously you got to hold a baby. You got to look into its eyes when it was born. You got to pet a little kitten. You got to taste ice cream. You got to climb trees. You got to swim in oceans and sometimes almost drown in them. But you got to see the bluest of the blue in the islands, and you got to see the greenest of the green in in the trees. You went to the redwood forest and you saw trees that were, because that's what we do to God. We go to God and we're like, we saw trees that were 10 times, we couldn't get our arms around them, God. And God's like, yeah, we created that. Told you, yeah. But then we go, oh God, you wouldn't believe it. And then we lost our child and it died in our arms. And we watched all the life leave our child. And God goes, I know, that's how I felt when you left. I love you. It's okay. And that is the resting place. That is what the resting place is like. And yes, we do keep some components from different lifetimes. We sit there and we talk to our soul family. And we decide together which components are going to help, not just ourselves when we come back, but all the other aspects of us that are out there, all the other soul family members that continue to be in the reincarnation loop over and over and over and over again. And we say that would help so-and-so. I should probably come back and play that role. And God goes, you're not going to remember them and they're not going to remember you, but there's going to be something. Let's decide what the something is. And you create what's called signs and symbols, angel numbers, all the things you think that the angels are doing is actually from you. It'll blow your mind how creation actually works. All the things that we think are from the gods were created as signs and symbols for us to remember by our soul family members. But because we believe from thousands of years of collective unworthiness that the signs have to be from something greater and bigger and better and more awake than us, we have forgotten this. All those angel numbers, you. All those signs, you and other versions of you. Sometimes we have forgotten so much because we've had so many lifetimes that, the curse of the old soul. The more you've been here, the more you forget. So you need some big signs. So then we're sitting there with God and it says, I will send my greatest version of you there. My greatest version of you is Archangel Michael. And you'll have a near-death experience. And Archangel Michael will come and you'll pretend he's something big and holy and better than you. But it's you. It's you. All the humans come from angelic DNA. Every single one of you, because the angels and the dragons were the first degree of separation from God. But we don't remember that. But there's a reason why we revere them so much. We are from them. Those were the original creation groups: Elohim, Seraphim, Cherubim, Ophanim, all of them together. But we have forgotten that. So God says, I'm gonna send the version of you that is Archangel Michael down. And you're gonna be so much, oh my gosh, in awe and wonder that you will have a deep spiritual awakening experience. And then the other version of you that is Michael goes, yeah, I'm in. That's why there's never been any definitive text that makes sense in our hearts about angels, no matter how much you learn. But I dare you, as a matter of fact, I double dog dare you to ask the angels who they are and where they're from. Go ahead. Ask how you're connected to them and how they're connected to you. Keep asking. It gets fun. It gets fun to remember all those versions of you and that you are everything that you've been praying to. The part of you that feels stuck here will feel very, very desecrated by that truth if you're not ready for it. That's why there are only a small amount of people that were meant to show up for this class. Because only a certain amount of people can handle that. My catalyst self in the back of my mind is going, yeah, go ahead and go put that on YouTube. But I'm born to be a catalyst. I'm born to tell you things that you're not ready to hear. In a sense, going back to the question about our souls having an origin point, God created all those things outside of time at the same time. But time began when we forgot. Time began the moment the angel said, I am fallen. Certain souls fell and separated and experienced an original version of Earth. And the more we do that, the more we think that this one was here first and that this one was here second. But one day we'll remember that there were original realms of creation that were all there together. Some say there are 7, some say there are 11, some say there are 13. I don't think any one of us will ever know how many there actually were originally. Some say there are 12. Theo, there's a collective that represents 12 realms and 12 original angels. I too have seen 12. 12 worlds created all at once, and 12 manners of forgetfulness and separation, all because God wanted to see itself. And that means that there are 12 orders of angels. But here's what we do. Here's the fun thing. We'll say, okay, there was originally 12 worlds, 12 orders of angels to help each of the 12 worlds, perhaps 12 different types of humans. This all makes sense. And then we go, okay, so within that world, I need to split that and make 2 versions of that same world. Within that sect of angels, I need to split that and make a portion that represents light and a portion that represents dark. I need to split that and see the other side of the coin of what was original. That's eating from the tree that has the fruit of knowledge, which is a metaphor for us continuing to want more versions of separation, which means that galactic history will always be accurate and inaccurate because we originally had something and then we added more, we added more, we added more, we added more. For those of you who have been learning from my version of galactic history for a long time, you'll notice that it's perpetually changing. Why is it perpetually changing? Because every time an old soul is born into a world, it brings forth wisdom from another world that changes your whole family tree. Because you're adding on, separating and adding more, separating and adding more, and you're forgetting even more. And also remembering all the versions of you that forgot and what you learned from the great forgetting. But what's different now is that we are remembering. We are going through what's called the great remembering. And if you want to remember every single thing that happened throughout every single component of time, you're going to be remembering not just for this lifetime, but for many more. And that pulls you back into the incarnation loop. That thirst for that fruit from the tree of knowledge will want more and more and more in it. And there's a portion of the ego that guarantees your desire for more, which guarantees its survival in a separate world. That's that component that says, learn more, learn more, learn more, 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 more. And you gather that information, and because you're also powerful creators who are fractals of cosmic source, you have the power to create more separation. And you do. We all do. By coming back again and again and again and again. Which is why it's interesting that now that we're going through the great remembering and we're remembering all we've done and all the different degrees of separation we've created and held and learned from. We remember more. It's called the great remembering. We're finally remembering everything that happened and everything that was done, has been done, and will be done. Yeah. So I can't tell you that the knowledge of your galactic origins actually help because time isn't really true. It's sort of like trying to remember. The best way I've described this recently would be I grew up in a tiny, tiny town. And there was just absolutely nothing. But within the midst of the nothing, there was a bunch of something. There was a bunch of nature. There was a bunch of trees. It was safe to be out until dark. It was safe for my mother to put me on my bicycle and say, yeah, go to the forest. You know what to do. You understand how not to fall out of a tree. You understand how not to drown. You understand how to run if you see a snake and not get bit by a dog. You understand life. She taught me those things early on and she said, go for it. Go explore. And I did, sun up to sunset. You understand? Gen Xers are out there going, yep, you didn't come down in the summer until the sun was setting and dinner time was on the table then. Right? We also didn't have homework. There was so much of it that we didn't have time to do that. It was a different world then. We had normal amounts of homework, a lot less pressure. But I grew up in this world of nothingness. So the part of me that wanted more said I wanted more education. Luckily, I had some talents coming in from other lifetimes that gave me practically a free ride into school. And that talent is music. So I went off and I studied and I learned. And I'm like, nah, I don't like that one. I'm going to go over here. Maybe I want to learn overseas. Maybe I want to, right? We just always want more. So we don't think about going back to that tiny little town with all of its traumas and pain. I had a lot of trauma from that time. Then it's not really helpful for me to go back and continue to remember the trauma. It's not helpful for me when I drive through and I see how just downtrodden my town actually is, how poor people are, how desolate the situation is. It doesn't help me to remember it. So your galactic origin in time is just that. You think that it's important because, well, it's the first thing that you remember. It doesn't mean that it is the first thing that you did and then you went on to the next thing. That's not how creation happens. In creation, there will be a version of you that's over here learning this, while a version of you is over on another planet in another universe learning something completely different. You just don't remember that version of you. Then there's a version of you on Earth doing something, maybe many versions of you on Earth. Maybe another version of you on this Earth. We don't know. Some call that the doppelganger experience. Some call that twin flames. That's why when twin flames meet, they don't work out very well. They want to go at each other because they are versions of each other that are completely different. Something pulls them, but they're also doppelgangers. They're versions of each other that are learning something so intensely different that they'll never understand the other version of themselves. That's why there's pain that comes along with meeting your twin. So understanding origin point is just a place that you think is an origin point. All those other versions of you happened at the same time in those realms at the same time. There was no first. But because we've been programmed that time is true, that life and birth and death come in a certain sequence of birth, then life, then death, then birth, then life, then death. We've been taught this and then that, and then this and then that. We've been taught linear truths in this realm. So we continue to believe that origin is that important. And that's the paradox of why I continue to read for you and give you your origin point. But what does it really mean? I'm giving you your most mastered version of you. Your most mastered version of you. Because there is no origin point. So what do we find instead when we read into that? We find the most mastered you. the you that learned the most, the you that remember the most, the place where you enjoyed the most. Why do you seek that so much? Because you've been separate and you've been gone from home for so long, and you think your home is in the stars. But your home isn't in the stars. That's just another version of you experiencing something different. And like the explorer that you are, you want to go find out that cosmic portion of you and see if that feels better than this one. That's the continuation of the grass is greener on the other side syndrome. We're doing that. We're doing more separation and pulling that into spirituality. Does each incarnation have a purpose? Oh yeah. Everything has purpose, or we wouldn't be doing it. This idea that it doesn't have a purpose just because the dream isn't actually real is so discouraging and actually not true. God doesn't do things without a reason. But here's the caveat to that. The paradox to that teaching is that we have so many belief systems that attach purpose to actions, and we attach those actions to culture, and those cultures have thousands of years of belief systems that are also disempowering and painful, which is how we feel like our purpose has to be something so big and grandiose. Because we're trying to get outside of thousands of years of shame culture from religion and unworthiness culture from education. And society and culture teaches us that we are nothing without our education. We are nothing without classism and the family that we come from and who they are. We're nothing without a good job. We're nothing without money. And there are some cultures. You could go, say, to India right now, okay, Americans, and you think that there's classism here? In other countries, your parents would be ashamed of who you marry, even if that person, say, made a lot of money and had the best job and had the best education and was a benefactor towards the homeless. They could be an incredible human with all those things in place. And the parents say, I don't like their lineage. I don't like their bloodline. I don't like their family name. That's a typical caste system problem. Right? There are many countries that will say, no, you would bring shame upon our family by marrying someone with a certain family name that they don't like. And it could be that that family doesn't have a lot of money. That family is known to be very poor. That family is known to be uneducated, whatever the case is. And then society labels that family as lesser than. But you fall in love with someone from that family, and your dad says you're going to bring shame upon our family if you marry that guy. That happens. Not just in India. I don't want to just pick on India. That's like many, many, many countries do that. No, there you go. It could be. But don't get too attached to the story. This is where stories come in. Someone in chat is saying, I think I came back to end the generational cycles of abuse started by my grandfather, who was my son in my last life. A trip to past lifetime memory of being my great grandmother in 2021. Right. But then this is what the ego does with that information. If everything doesn't go exactly how we want it to go for what we would deem as a success in healing that, then we trick ourselves into coming back to complete it. So just be mindful of those stories and of their power. That's why shamans will always be needed on this version of Earth. Because people come in and they're like, but I know that I'm here for that. But you don't know how and what that looks like in terms of what healing those generational cycles of abuse will look like, or if it will be healed. And sometimes the ego likes to get a hold of that truth and it twists it, it darkens it, it puts on a certain lens. And in that lens, it could say that should look like this. And if it doesn't, you haven't done well, you might have to come back. So just be wary of that knowledge. Give that to Divine Creator. Give that knowledge to your higher self. And just say, okay, thy will be done, cosmic source. Thy will be done. With however that's meant to look like is however that's meant to look like. Because the ego likes to grasp the spiritual truth and it wraps all around it and it goes, now we do this, now we go do that, now we go do that. Oh, you didn't do it right. We're gonna have to come back. The ego likes to kind of grab that and create a cycle of power over, power under, whatever it needs to do to make sure that it remains the boss and that you keep coming back with a fully active ego that is the active boss of you. That's ego's greatest trick. And that is the only way that the reincarnation trap cycle is true. When you attach all that meaning to your spiritual purpose, the ego goes, great, you didn't do it well, come back and do it again. So this idea of the trap being some other beings out there trapping you into it, you the whole time.